Hey, what's up, Renegade Shroom Heads? Welcome back. I'm going to cover something today that is a question I get asked a lot. So you're out in the woods, you're hunting maybe some chaga or some medicinal polypores, like I have behind me right there, and you find a bunch of them, and then you got to figure out how to process them. These mushrooms, these polypores, are really hard and woody, and a lot of people, when they first try and like process them, they use like a food processor or a blender or something like that. And I gotta admit, I tried the food processor on chaga when I found my first chaga, and all I did is about destroy my wife's food processor, so that didn't give me any brownie points. Over the years now, I've done a ton of these. I'm going to show you how I do it. And laid out behind me on the table, I got basically all the implements of destruction you're going to need to chop these up. And obviously these are too tough to be edible. These are just going to be, something that you're going to make like a tea or a tincture or medicinal extraction out of. But in order to do that effectively, you got to get them chopped up. So let's do it. Okay, so I have some lovely hard woody polypore mushrooms here that are commonly used medicinally. This one here is Tinder Polypore, and been out in the woods lately. See, like it's spring, it's April, the weather's getting nice, but it's too early for the morels to be popping up here. But you can still get out in the woods and hunt these medicinal polypores because these things grow year round. It's pretty cool. I'll show you guys too. When you chop them up, you can actually count the growth rings just like a tree, because these mushrooms, they stay on the trees all year round. Obviously they're growing during the warm season, and then they slow down in the winter, so you get really noticeable annuli or growth rings, and you can count them and actually see how old your polypore is. So we have Tinder Polypore over here, and this is artist conch or Ganoderma applanatum. And these are some pretty nice ones. Definitely not the biggest I've found, but these are pretty nice ones. The oldest artist conch I've found so far was about 13 years old, I figured. So these guys aren't going to be that old, but these are nice ones. So Tinder Polypore, artist conch. I have a couple different methods of rinsing them off once I get them chopped up into pieces. So I have a big strainer here, or you can just use a storage tote with some holes drilled in it. Both work well. And then we have a cardboard box. You need a nice, somewhat deep cardboard box. And then this is the main attraction here. It's called a sidewalk edger, and I picked this up at Lowe's. It was about 35, 40 bucks. And basically it's just a heavy hatchet blade on a shovel handle. And this thing will chop about anything into submission. So I'm going to start with the artist conch, and then we'll move on to the Tinder Polypore, but I'm going to go ahead and set the camera up and chop these boys up. All right, so here we go. Occasionally they will fly out of the box too. That's why it's nice to have a box that has somewhat deep sides on it. But if they fly out, not a big deal. Just throw them back in there and keep on chomping. We're gonna give them a nice wash down when we're done anyway. I try to get them in like golf ball size chunks if I can. These will make some dust too, so just be aware of that. You might want to wear a mask or something when you're doing this. Alright, so I think that's pretty good. We're going to dump that out and do our next one. So this is our biggest artist conch here, so I'm going to see if I can get a clean chop right down the middle, and we'll take a look and see how old we think it is. All right. So you can see there the growth rings. Thinking this one's only like Not very old, man. It's probably like, I'm going to say 4 years old. 4 years old, I'm thinking. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 on top. All right. Move on to the Tinder Polypore. Okay, so these Tinder Polypore are smaller, so I'm just going to throw them all in there. All right, that looks pretty good. So it was a lapse time of about a couple minutes there, and we made pretty quick work of those polypores. Got them into nice sized chunks. You might get a few little chunks of cardboard in there too, just from chopping at your box, but those will rinse out when you rinse. So yeah, and a box will last a while. I usually do, I'd say at least 4 or 5 rounds of chopping out of one box, and then the bottom will be wasted, and you can go ahead and use your cardboard to grow some mushrooms, or use it in the garden as weed cover or something like that, recycle it, whatever. So yeah, at this point basically you just have to rinse these guys out, give them a good rinse, and then I throw them in the dehydrator. And actually, once you dehydrate them, like some of these chunks like this where they have fissures from being chopped, once this dries out, they break apart really easily into even smaller pieces if you want to. So that's it. I'm gonna rinse these off, get them in the dehydrator, and I usually dry them around 100 degrees, nice and low and slow for my medicinals. And to make sure I showed you guys this in this video as well. So we have some Tinder Polypore here that we chopped up, and we chopped this up in the garage. This has been run through the dehydrator, nice and dried out. We have some nice, like golf ball size chunks here. But if you want to make a medicinal tincture, you probably want it even smaller than this. I like to get it smaller. The trick with making a tincture is, the more you grind your product, the more extractable surface area there will be. So, if I just tinctured this one piece, your alcohol is, or water, or combination of two, whatever you're using, that's basically your solvent. So your solvent can only act on the exposed surfaces. If I take this piece and grind it even smaller, obviously there's going to be a lot more exposed surface. So theoretically I can extract more medicinal compounds. That's the idea with that. So the initial chop I did, then I rinsed them really well, and then I dried them for about, I would say 12 to 24 hours at 100 degrees in the dehydrator. And these are nice and hard now. These are like wood, basically, nice and dried out. So now they're ready to grind, if you want to go take it to the next step. So what I have here is just an old school 2-pound hand crank meat grinder. And you can find these all over the place. You can order them online new. A lot of times you can find them used and just clean them out. This one was a used one from a friend, and I just completely sanitized it, cleaned it all out, and it's never had meat run through it since. I've only used it for mushrooms. So what I do is, we got to feed them kind of slow. I'll feed like one piece at a time, and you have to have a fairly large plate. You can see this is the grinder plate on the end here, and there's actually like a wheel inside there that rotates and forces everything through and grinds it. If you don't have a big plate, I believe this is like a 1-inch plate. You probably don't have to go quite this big, but don't use a smaller plate because it's going to clog up on you. You want to use a bigger plate, like anything from 3/4 to an inch I would recommend for the hole size. And if you do that, you won't have any clogging issues, and it's going to grind this stuff really nice. So you can do chaga, artist conch, Tinder Polypore. You could grind reishi with this if you wanted to, birch polypore, pretty much any hard woody polypore once you get it all nice and dried out. So one thing I have learned too is that this thing, when you grind, it'll kind of shoot chunks out the end of it. So I just have a plastic tub here, and I kind of just prop it up. I have the grinder clamped to the table because this thing's going to want to walk all over on you, so make sure you have it clamped down. And you are probably going to want to wear like a dust mask when you do this too, because it does make a fair bit of dust when you're grinding the mushrooms. So let's run a couple through here, and you guys can see how it works. So we got our nice chunk of Tinder Polypore there. Put that in, and this table isn't like, it's just a plastic table, so I gotta go slow. But you can see that auger is just chopping it, sending it. So the auger is feeding it through, pushing it down to that plate. And you can see it's gonna start sending that grind out the end there. Let's run one more piece through it. And another nice chunk. Put that in. A little better angle there. All right, so usually I do this on a more firm, solid wooden table out in the garage, but there's just not good lighting out there right now, so wanted to do it down here. But you get the idea. So, you know, we reduce that to a nice, fine, much finer grind now. So now you have a lot more extractable surface area to make your tea or tincture, or combination of the two if you're doing a double extraction. Now you could easily just bag this up and save it for later, and, you know, store it in the fridge or the freezer. You know, or you could put it right into a jar and get your tea or tincture rolling. I am going to do some videos as well showing the actual tincture, probably the dual extraction tincture process, where you use alcohol and water to make a, you know, combined water alcohol extraction and kind of maximize the medicinal potential. That's the method I like to use. So I am going to make a video on that eventually, but there's a lot of instructions how to do that online as well. So that's basically how I process my medicinal mushrooms to get them ready for tincturing. So one thing you want to check at the end of your grind session, if you do use a meat grinder, this thing can grind just about anything, but it will leave some mushroom chunks in the grinder. So just when you take everything apart, you can just make sure you clean all that out. There'll be some like up in the housing and up in the auger here. So one thing I want to caution you guys against too, because I know people that have done this, don't think you can buy like a cheaper electric meat grinder and get away with it, because you can see there's a good bit still in there. That's what I'm talking about. There'll be some at the end of your grind session trapped in your auger. But don't think you can buy a cheaper electric meat grinder and get away with this, because they typically have plastic gears and they're not designed for stuff this hard, and you'll strip those gears right out and wreck it. So either go hand crank, or you got to have a serious like industrial electric meat grinder to pull this off. If you get a good one with metal gears, you'll be fine, but cheaper ones, it'll wreck them. So hit me up in comments, let me know what you guys do, if you have any tips or tricks. I always love to hear that stuff from you guys and learn a lot from you as well. But that's gonna be it for me, so I'll catch you guys next video.